Avengers Endgame almost saw Bruce Banner face off against arguably his greatest foe, himself. In a recent interview, co-writers Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely revealed that they scripted a scene in which Banner meets his angry green alter ego in a Soul Stone-induced vision after using the Stark Gauntlet to bring back all of the dusted heroes. The scene, unfortunately, never made it before the cameras. The scene followed a rule of sorts established in Avengers Infinity War in the poignant scene in which Thanos encounters young Gamora inside the Soul Stone after snapping away half of all life in the universe.
Did you do it?
Yes.
What did it cost?
Everything.
Thanks to Endgame's titanic runtime, however, the rule was never invoked again. A scene was shot in which Tony Stark has a Soul Stone-based conversation with an older version of his daughter Morgan after he uses the Infinity Stones to dust Thanos and his army, but it ended up on the cutting room floor. The scene in which Banner and Hulk hash out their differences after the restorative snap existed in an early draft of the script, according to Marcus. The scribe recalled, "We did actually write a version, and this existed before the Ancient One scene was slowly beaten out, but there was a version where it was Banner talking to the Hulk, and we never shot it, but it was kind of a cool thing to get them both on screen together interacting." We disagree. It would have been a really cool thing, but when you're crafting the epic conclusion to a decade-long saga involving dozens of characters, you simply can't include every single cool idea you might have. In fact, it probably won't surprise you to know that the Banner-Hulk sequence was far from the only one to be scripted for Endgame, only to get cut before the cameras rolled.
Dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards.
After the devastating events of Infinity War, Marcus and McFeely used Endgame's 5-year time jump to explore the effects that such a brutal loss would have on the Avengers. They all took interesting and often unexpected directions. Banner merged the two halves of himself to permanently become Smart Hulk, Hawkeye became a bloodthirsty vigilante, and Thor got drunk and bro-y, for example.
Listen, buddy, if you don't log off this game immediately, I'm gonna fly over to your house, come down to that basement you're hiding in, rip off your arms, and shove them up your butt!
But in an early draft of the screenplay, one team member, James Rhodes, aka War Machine, made a pretty big leap from superheroism to the highest levels of politics. In a recent chat with comicbook.com, Marcus explained, "We took it out because it didn't have any story weight, but I believe that during one draft in the 5-year jump, Rhodey became vice president. It actually makes a lot of sense. He was a decorated career soldier before suiting up, he was pro-registration during the events of Captain America Civil War, and he's so darn patriotic that he was briefly referred to as the Iron Patriot. Heck, Rhodey could step out of the MCU and into our universe to run for office, and he'd have our vote." Another scene involved a character that Marvel fans have been waiting patiently to see on screen forever, Richard Rider, the man called Nova. In the comics, Rider is an Earthling tapped by Roman Day, the last survivor of the destruction of Xandar, to house the entirety of that planet's knowledge, the Xandarian world mind, and the combined power of its armed forces, the Nova Corps. Xandar, Nova Corps, leader Nova Prime, and Day were all introduced in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy, but Rider was not. And if the character had been included in Endgame, his backstory would have been significantly tweaked. Also, it would have been he, and not Hulk, who would have come crashing to Earth to warn the Avengers of Thanos' impending arrival in Infinity War. Marcus told comicbook.com, "I remember in the big manifesto thing that we did, where the first work we did on these movies, where we just, every possible storyline that you could take from what's around, that Nova has the Xandarian world mind. In this conception, he would be the Herald, not unlike the Hulk, that one member of the Nova Corps who survived Thanos' attack. The Xandarian world mind would be the voice of Glenn Close, because you had her and why not? And that he would be Richard Rider and he would come to Earth. It would have been amazing." Another choice that was kicked around early in the scripting process would have altered Endgame's narrative even more drastically. In a wide-ranging sit-down with the New York Times, the Ace writing duo explained that originally the Avengers' time travel shenanigans didn't involve a return to the Battle of New York. Instead, the team would have wound up in Asgard, where an invisible stealth suit wearing Tony Stark would have done battle with Heimdall, who would have been able to see him. Look, we understand that massive projects like this go through lengthy bouts of revision, and ultimately Marcus and McFeely did an amazing job of crafting the complex and crowded narratives of Infinity War and Endgame. But Invisible Iron Man fighting Heimdall? Of all the cool things the scribes were forced to cut, this has got to be the coolest. If the producers of the upcoming Disney Plus series What If haven't been made aware that this was once on the table, someone needs to clue them in pronto. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.